stop saving jars. We are not gonna run out of jars.
Like, but I don't want to recycle it. Well, I'm sitting here, so this means that we're not cooking today. The world is on fire. Everything is expensive. We are in a trade war. Let's discuss some tips for eating on a budget. So I don't know where this idea came from that eating plant-based is really expensive. I would argue that in general, eating is expensive right now, but there is definitely a myth, I think because of a lot of like pre-packaged processed vegan food, that eating plant-based just is not a sustainable thing to do financially. And that just is not further from the truth. I would argue that dairy and meat are incredibly expensive. But there's a few ways that we can kind of limit the money that we're spending and still eat really good food. Like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, buy beans and rice and only eat that. That's not what we're doing here today. At the end of the day, buying groceries from a grocery store and then cooking your meals at home is always going to be less expensive than going out to eat. It's all about like knowing what to buy and knowing what to make and knowing how to store it. So once you have those three things down, you're good to go. So let's start with the first thing, which is how do you shop on a budget? Obviously, the first thing is comparing prices. It's kind of a no-brainer, but a lot of people don't see the value in hitting up various grocery stores in order to save money. A lot of people will argue, well, I'm spending gas. Maybe depending on where you are, but I would say that the majority of us live in like a city. Maybe you live in a food desert and that might be the case, but it's 2025 and we have options thanks to technology. So checking out and price comparing and seeing what is on sale where is a huge thing that you can do that'll save you a bunch of money off the bat. Try and shop at like smaller mom and pop grocery stores or your local grocery store or your farmer's market, but I also understand that that is not always feasible for everyone. In the summer, farmer's markets, they're gonna be the best bang for your buck. You're eating in season, but we also live in Canada where 8 months out of the year it is freezing. So you can't do that all the time. But a lot of the time, what people don't realize is that the discounted version of a grocery store, so in Canada where I am, Food Basics and the No Frills, for example, they're owned by the larger conglomerate. So No Frills is owned by Loblaws. It's just the discounted version of it. So you're getting the same produce at the discounted grocery store as you are at Loblaws. So if you go to No Frills and you buy an apple, it's the same apples that they're selling you at Loblaws. Just because it's a discounted grocery store, it's not lower quality. It's just a lower price because they have a monopoly. They're hitting every single market. If you cook with a lot of like international spices, ethnic food spices and flavors, just hit up the ethnic or international grocery stores. Go to Chinatown, go to Koreatown, go to those grocery stores. When you're paying like $10 for a tiny international spice at a huge grocery store, you can also pay $10 and get a bag this big. The second point I want to make about shopping smarter also has to do with not giving in to things like fear mongering. Buying organic, sure. Try not to give in to the hype of that. A lot of it is fear mongering. And studies actually show that organic food is not actually worth it at the end of the day because the nutrition value is not worth the extra price that you're paying for that food. Like the perceived benefits almost never justify the means. For example, like a conventionally grown carrot will have the same beta carotene nutrients that a organically grown carrot has. It has the fiber, it's got the vitamins. Those things are the same. If you're worried about pesticides, I'm gonna burst your bubble here. Organic farmers also have to use pesticides, and their organic pesticides are often derived from natural resources. That doesn't mean it is natural though. And a lot of the time you have to use more of those pesticides because they are less effective. So at the end of the day, you're getting food that has more pesticides on it. If buying organic is really, really important to you, it's a thing that you like really stand for, a way that you can cut down your costs is only buy things that are on the Dirty Dozen list or the Clean 15 list. Those are the things that are the most heavily sprayed with pesticides. So if you kind of want to like pick and choose which things are organic and which aren't, stick to those lists. The third thing for shopping smarter is to be a mindful shopper. Kind of popping out here and there for ingredients will mean that you come back with a ton of things that you don't need. Every time I pop out for like, oh, I just need like some soy milk, I come back with $50 worth of snacks and other things that I did not go to the grocery store for. I like to grocery shop with an app. So I like to get my groceries delivered. It means that I can get delivered groceries from many different grocery stores depending on what is cheaper at what grocery store. I also do this because I don't own a car, so transporting those groceries can be be difficult for me. It also means that I can go to grocery stores that are not close by. When I buy things online, I'm only searching for the things on my list. I'm not browsing, so I'm not spending any extra money. So what do we buy? Buy budget plant-based items. The first most important thing I would say is stick to unpackaged, whole plant-based foods. Vegan treats, cookies, meat alternatives, and vegan cheeses are great and they're delicious, but they're also very, very costly. I like to buy them once in a while as like a treat, but for the most part, I can make a lot of those things on my own. If I want vegan cookies, I will just bake them. They taste a lot better and I can control the ingredients going into them, and they don't have to be shelf stable, so there's no preservatives or anything in them. So I'm getting like a more like bare bones vegan treat that I have more control of, and it's less expensive. Buying staples in bulk is a huge thing. A lot of people, when they're like, okay, I'm gonna go to the grocery store, I'm gonna buy beans and lentils and rice, and then they go and they buy them in cans. Buying dried legumes, beans, lentils, that sort of thing, dried in their dry form in bulk is pennies compared to if you get it canned. And the only thing you really have to do is remember to soak it overnight. Or if you have an Instant Pot, you don't even need to do that. There's no real excuse for buying the canned version unless, you know, it's for convenience reason, but we're here to save money. And you can use those items to make things like burgers, like meaty taco fillings. You can make hummus. There's tons of things that you can turn those items into. It doesn't just have to be like, here's some beans. And then buy things that are like nutrition powerhouses, things like sweet potatoes, purple potatoes. They're so tasty. There's so many different things that you can do with them, and they're dirt cheap. So what about like produce and that sort of thing? A lot of those things I like to buy frozen. Frozen produce a lot of the time is just as nutritious, if not more, than the fresh version. Now, I'm not suggesting like buy frozen cauliflower and then make mushy cauliflower wings. No, you have to use them specifically. How many times have you bought berries and then like 2 days later they go bad in your fridge? Just buy the frozen version. Chances are you're only going to use them in smoothies anyway, or use frozen vegetables in things like stews. Cook and shop smarter with what is available to you. They never go bad because they're frozen, and they save you a ton of money. The other thing you can do is buying those like imperfect fruits and vegetables. So I know that the grocery store in my area, they have like an imperfect foods section. Perfect pristine carrot is just as nutritious as the ugly carrot. There's no rhyme or reason. It's just not as pretty to look at, and unfortunately we do eat with our eyes. So you can get a huge discount if you buy the ugly produce. And also don't forget to shop those like discounted areas where it's like, oh, they're gonna turn soon. Well, they're not turned yet. So now we know where to shop and how to shop, and we know what we're shopping for. But how do we know what we're shopping for? Have a meal plan. Know what you're making for the week. There are a lot of things that you can make at home that are cheaper than buying them pre-made. Things like hummus, dairy-free cheeses. I make my own pancake mix. I'm not gonna spend $20 on like a tiny thing of protein pancake mix when I can make my own using Complement Protein, which is the best protein out there anyway. But you can make all of these things for a fraction of the cost just by buying the individual ingredients. Speaking of making my own protein powder using Complement, let's talk about today's sponsor. So you guys know I am obsessed with Complement. As a plant-based eater, I have tried every single plant-based protein that exists. This one from Complement, I think is the world's best protein. It's made with 5 real food, like whole ingredient proteins. It's made with almond, chia seed, pumpkin seed, sunflower seed, and yellow pea. It never has any preservatives. And it's 15 grams of complete protein per serving. You don't have to be like a gym bro or gym girly to eat protein. I love this in my morning smoothies. It's just like the quickest way for me to get a big boost of protein and keeps me fuller longer. It's also clean and easily digestible, but it also has no chalky like mouthfeel. It's not grainy, and it doesn't have a weird aftertaste. My favorite is the unflavored because I can tailor it to whatever I want depending on what I'm making with it. I cook with it. I make like protein pancakes with it. I throw it in smoothies. Every single order that is placed provides a plant-based meal to a child in need. So if you have not yet tried Complement and you've been dying to, today's your lucky day because you get 15% off your entire order if you use code Edgy Veg. I'm gonna leave the links in the description box down below, so definitely give them a try. They have a ton of really amazing products, so check them out. And thank you so much to Complement for sponsoring today's video. But back to meal planning. Meal planning is the most important thing that you can do. Not only does it help you buy only the ingredients that you need, and that's because you can plan to use the same ingredients in multiple different meals. meals. So instead of being like, oh, this week I'm going to make 5 different meals, 10 different ingredients that have nothing to do with each other, and then they all go bad in the fridge, you can buy the same ingredients and use them in a variety of different meals. You can also repurpose leftovers, but you can only do that if you plan. Also, I would suggest pick a day where you somewhat prep your meals. I'm not saying like you gotta become like a gym bro and like portion out your like broccoli and your brown rice and do that every single day. No, I'm not suggesting you do that. But like maybe you wash and chop up your vegetables that you just picked up from the store and put them in containers that keep them fresh longer. I have a whole video about like how to keep certain foods fresher for longer. Washing, prepping, and storing your foods is gonna cut down on waste. It also makes cooking so much easier. Okay, so that's all well and good, but what do we meal prep? Meals that are really, really cheap don't have to be like gross or boring. You know, you buy a packet of ramen and then you zhuzh it up. Like I make this all of the time. I like to make like a creamy base with the bouillon that it comes with soy milk and chili crisp and sesame oil. So you can really take packaged foods and zhuzh them up, and they're inexpensive and they end up being very nutritionally dense. Like just pack the veggies in there. So things like ramen, things like chilies, soups, stews are so delicious. We love to eat them, especially in the winter, and they're packed full of nutrient dense veggies, and they're easy to freeze, but they're also so inexpensive. Things like shepherd's pie, a lentil enchilada, those things, again, they're so tasty. They're not boring. I guess all this to say, inexpensive eating, whether it's plant-based or not, takes a little bit more brain power. At the end of the day, it'll totally be worth it. And eating cheap foods do not need to feel cheap when you are eating them. They can be a really delicious gourmand experience if you just put like a little thought into it. So I don't want to hear that eating plant-based is expensive, because it's just not. You just have to be mindful. Better for you, it's better for the environment. Let me know if you want some videos on budget-friendly meals, if you want more money-saving tips. Listen, I grew up in a dirt poor family. We reused everything. We had a scarcity mindset. So I have some tips, some old school Depression era tips that I learned from my parents that I can bestow upon you. Happy budget-friendly buying. And a huge thank you again to Compliment for sponsoring the Edgy Veg so we can do all of this. Make sure to check out the links in the description box down below and use code EDGYVEG for 15% off your entire order. And I'll talk to you next time. Bye!